Lost Cause by Rachel Lynch. Read by Clare Kissane. Chapter 1. A waste removal lorry crawled along at a plodding pace. It was unhurried. Rubbish collection rounds in the Lake District were protracted affairs. Nonchalant sheep, devoted walkers, map-wielding tourists, overladen caravans, and the odd 80-ton vehicle delivering building supplies to a cul-de-sac all got in the way. The men were chirpy. It was still a man's job, and swapped jokes as they waved at patiently waiting car drivers and caught up on gossip from the Daily Mail. It was particularly difficult work at this time of year, when winter gripped the national park and covered her with a blanket of white for a couple of months and slowed everything down. The men were used to it and wore thick gloves, woolen hats and undergarments. Their breath billowed in clouds in front of them every time they spoke. In years gone by, the vapour would have been made up of cigarette smoke from fags hanging from the side of every worker's mouth. But not in today's health-conscious society. It was banned on the job, and the smokers had to wait until they got back to the depot to stand in the designated smoking area, just outside of the back gate. Someone beeped a horn. One of the men, dragging 2 heavy purple waste wheelie bins, looked up at where the noise had come from and scowled. "How long are you going to be, mate?" asked a man with his head stuck out of the driver's side window of a new silver Mercedes. "As long as it takes, mate," the worker replied, turning round and putting his back to the stranger. The others smirked and carried on with their tasks. There was no time to give everyone an explanation of their progress, especially a fancy Merc driver who thought himself a cut above. They worked against a tight timeline, each worker an automaton, dragging, pushing, locking, changing, emptying and lining up. It was like watching a production line. It was a far cry from the days when burly, statuesque men carried tin bins on their shoulders and emptied them by hand. Now, the scrawniest teenager could get a job dragging a plastic tub to a machine that did all the work. The Mercedes driver shook his head and banged his steering wheel. He was going to be late. Despite snow piled up on the sides of the road, the sky was bright blue, and every now and again a bin worker stopped to remove a hat or his high-visibility orange jacket, throwing it into the cabin, where the driver was warm and dry. He'd watch from the high vantage point of the lorry's cab as the exchange with the silver Merc took place, and slowed down a little to further frustrate the guy driving. It was a regular pastime to make the job more interesting. He manoeuvred the vehicle deftly round a parked car, taking care to avoid the dry stone wall on the other side. They were halfway along a narrow road, which was inhabited by possibly 5 residents, as well as one at the very end, before it opened up and split into 2. Why the Merc was using this route was baffling, unless he wasn't local and didn't know either the waste disposal days or the tightness of this route. Or maybe he was one of the residents, though the workers recognised most of the homeowners on their rounds, and they didn't think he was. "Jesus!" One of the men, tasked with lining the bins up, bent over, and vomit spewed out of his mouth. "Jim, you all right, mate?" one of his colleagues asked. The Merc driver rolled his eyes. A milk delivery van was behind him, and then 2 more vehicles behind that. They all came to a grinding halt. A sheep bleated from behind a stone wall in the distance. "That fucking stinks!" Jim pointed to a wheelie bin. His fellow worker was puzzled. They came across foul-smelling waste all day long, and he was at a loss to see what Jim could have found so repulsive. The lad was obviously ill. Then he smelt it. He covered his mouth and backed away, He stepped from behind the lorry and beckoned to the driver in his cab to wait before he moved off. The driver gave him a thumbs up, which was acknowledged through the reflection in the wing mirror. Fucking hell! An older guy, seasoned by years of malodorous fumes, stepped forward and walked past Jim and his colleague. A car door slammed, and the Merc owner joined them. What's the hold-up? Christ, that reeks! He also covered his mouth and watched as the one worker, seemingly immune to noxious, fetid fumes, approached the offending wheelie bin and opened the lid. He peered in, and the others were satisfied to see that even he covered his mouth. He continued to look inside the receptacle and then slammed the lid and backed away. He walked towards them, the colour drained away from his face. What is it? They all asked in unison. It's a fucking arm, he said, as he bent over and retched on the side of the road, wasting this morning's fine cup of tea and thick bacon sandwich slathered in brown sauce. The spew steamed, and he could smell the vinegar of the sauce and the smoke of the bacon. Chapter 2. Kelly Porter ran along the Ullswater Road, flanked by grey dry stone walls on one side and the beautiful lake on the other. From Pooley Bridge, where she lived in a small cottage overlooking the River Aymont towards Aeroforce, the traffic was minimal at this time of the year, especially this early in the morning, and she only saw the odd car speeding towards her. She was a confident runner and made her presence known on the road, though anyone who cared for her would have covered their eyes, trying not to wince at the risks she took, especially with the thick piles of snow shovelled to the sides of the road. But a local was used to it. She wore thick black Nike leggings, emblazoned with the logo in neon green along the length of her leg. A bright orange sweater made her stand out among the drab brown stains on the road and the lifeless trees. A snood wrapped round her chin, and her long auburn hair was tied tightly behind her head. She was not yet 40. Her cheekbones were still high, and her eyes bright. Her cheeks were flushed with new life inside her, and she pounded the road at a steady rhythm. She could have been mistaken for a runner in her 20s, and vans beeped their appreciation as they passed her, making her smile and wave. Occasionally, if she wasn't in such a good mood, they'd get a middle finger. To Kelly, running along the main road wasn't a risk. She knew it with her eyes closed and instinctively judged the terrain before her, around every bend and dip in the road. Her breath came in great pillows of vapour, and her lungs worked hard to keep the rhythm. There was nothing wrong with keeping up strenuous exercise when pregnant, so her doctor had told her, and she hadn't noticed much of a difference. But then she was only 8 weeks gone. Her abdomen didn't look any different, and no one, except Johnny, knew that there was another human being growing inside her. A person who she had yet to decide if she wanted to meet or not. Johnny was adamant they should raise the child. But Kelly was concerned. Actually, she was terrified. For a start, Johnny had screwed up his first marriage and missed out on the rearing of his only child, Josie. They'd only rekindled their relationship very recently. What if it happened again? No, Johnny was a good man. It wouldn't happen again. He wasn't that soldier anymore, and he wanted this child. Then there was Rob Shawcross. Detective Constable Rob Shawcross, rising star of her department, new father and showing the signs of what a little person could do to an adult person. It was pure torture. Rob came in to work at Eden House in Penrith, where Kelly ran the serious crime unit for the North Lakes,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?